The famous Magnates Media 3D scene animation. This is exactly what we're going to be recreating in this tutorial. And the great thing is, if you follow along, this will set the foundations for you to do 3D scenes in a bunch of different projects. Now, that's some important information that you do not want to miss out on. I'm hosting a free workshop on May 22nd. Here I'll be showing you the exact steps I took from becoming an okay or average editor to where I was struggling to land clients and struggling to create quality work in animations like the Danko style, Iman Ghazi style, style, or any really high quality viral style out there. And even the few clients that I did end up landing, I always got underpaid, and the clients themselves were super nitpicky and were unappreciative of me as an editor. To now where I became a leveraged editor and I'm able to land high paying clients anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a month, working with top level influencers and brands who appreciate your video edits and your work. And now I'm not stressing out as an editor to get projects done on time and getting paid literally what I deserve. And then from there, I'm going to be showing you the exact systems I used to then scale my content agency to $30,000 a month in just 4 months. So if you're tired from bouncing around from course to course on trying to become a great editor who's able to do the viral styles out there and trying to piece together what makes a great editor and how you can charge more to literally $2,000 or $5,000 a month for a single client, and then trying to figure out on your own of how to scale that into a $30,000 a month agency, then this free workshop is for you. In this workshop, we're going to be covering the 3 things that you are missing from becoming a leverage editor and scaling your content agency. It's going to be a first come, first serve, meaning that there's going to be a limit to the amount of people that can join this live workshop. There's also going to be an exclusive surprise at the end for those that attend. So make sure to click the link in the description, as you do not want to miss out on the chance to join this free workshop. And we don't know if we're going to be running this again for free. So join now. The link is in the description. And with that, let's get into this tutorial. Alrighty, so we are in After Effects. The first thing that we want to do is make a new composition here. You could go ahead and copy these settings right here and then just hit OK. You'll get this screen here. From here, what we're going to be doing is building out our scenes. Then we're going to get into the 3D animation portion of it, and then we're going to stylize it at the end. So it might not look that great at the moment, but believe me, when it gets towards the end, that's when it really starts to tie together. All right, so the first scene that we are going to be building is this warehouse scene with the IKEA logo. Now, all the assets that I am using are available for free for you to download. So go ahead, the link is in the description for that. Download this stuff for free. If you want to go out and find it on your own, you certainly can. But we're going to put in this warehouse image here. First thing that I'm going to add to it is a Gaussian blur. So we're going to up that quite a bit. Now we're going to toss in the IKEA logo. Obviously need to scale this down. And then to put this perfectly in the middle, we're going to go over to our align tab, click on align horizontally and align vertically. That'll put it perfectly in the middle for us. If you don't see the align tab, it's just in your windows, and make sure align is selected. From here, what we're going to do is add some text. So I'm going to type out strangest. We're going to change the font to dkp.i. Scale this down quite a bit. Add some rotation. Go over to my effects tab here and look up drop shadow. Toss that drop shadow onto the text that we just made. I'm going to change this to a dark blue. You can copy these settings here, hit OK. Then we're going to up the opacity to around 80%. And the distance is probably good as is. Yeah, distance of 5 is good. Just positioning this in the right area. Add a little more rotation to it. Right there should be good. I'm going to duplicate this by hitting Command D on a Mac, Control D on a PC. We're going to rotate it this way. And then we're going to double click to change the text to most innovative. The gap between this is too much, so we're going to go over to our close that gap. If you don't see this text panel, once again, it's just in the window. You should see character checked off, and you'll be able to mess with the text settings. Here we're going to add some arrows here. Once again, you can download this for free or find it online. So I like this arrow here. I'm going to add a little rotation to it. Have that pointing at strangest. What we can do to this arrow is also change the color of it. So in the effects and presets, I'm going to look up change to color. I'm going to toss that onto the arrow. We're going to take that eyedropper tool, click on the black, go to the white and change this to a darker blue. Nothing has changed yet, so we need to change the hue to hue, lightness, and saturation. And with that, once you change that, you should see the blue color pop up, and I'm just going to make it this dark blue here. That should be good. We're going to toss in one more arrow, scale that down quite a bit, add a rotation to that, position that right. And then what we can do is just copy this change the color setting here, the effect, and paste that onto our blue arrow hit there. So all I did was just Command V it and then Command C it onto our other arrow here. We also want to be organized. So dealing with 3D scenes, being organized with your layers is extremely important. I'm not the most organized person, but I still try to organize as much as I can. So I'm going to call this arrow 2, name this to arrow 1, and we're looking good there. I'm just going to up the blurriness a little bit on the background, probably like 20, and we should be good. From here, we need to add our money. So I'm going to toss this money burst. Once again, you will be able to download this completely for free. I'm going to toss that on there. Just kind of position it where it needs to be. I'm actually going to duplicate it as well. And because we're going to have 2 little money layers here. And I'm just going to drag it to the left so it's playing at a different time. And that's pretty good. So this is our first scene. We made our first scene. Now we need to move on to the second scene before we start actually getting into the 3D animation. So where I want to cut this one, obviously if there was a voiceover, that's how you'd get the timing. So where we want to cut this is right around like just a little bit after the 3-second mark. I'm going to highlight everything here, and then I'm going to do Command Shift D. That's going to cut everything, and I'm going to hit backspace. So that's just making a cut right after that 3-second mark. All right, now we're going to move on to the second scene, which is relatively simple. So for the second scene, I have this picture of IKEA. Once again, you can download this in the description. We're going to scale this up all the way so it's just taking up the entire frame here. From here, what we need to do is cut out the building from the sky. So to do that, make sure you have this layer selected. I'm going to go over to my pen tool, and then I'm going to go all the way over to here and click once. And now we're going to follow this out. I'm going to speed this up on my end, but yeah, you want to cut out the sky and just like follow the lines of the building. So as you can see, I cut it out here just with that pen tool. Now we're going to toss a cloud background underneath it. And what we can do is just make sure everything, it's going to be a little overlapped here. So I want a little overlap. We can do that. We can cut this layer here too. And you can see the sky background is obviously not big enough, so I'm just going to scale that up for now. Kind of place it where I want it to be, showing a little more clouds in there. Now that's looking pretty good. The next thing is the text that is needed. So I'm going to go over to my text tool, click once over here, type in 50 billion. Obviously, we need to change the font, so I'm going to change that to, we're going to do Helvetica Neue Condensed Bold. So you should have this font. If not, I'll give it to you with all the other assets. We're going to scale this up. You can also add a cut right here just so it aligns with everything. And then what we want to do with this text here is just kind of put it roughly in the right area. In the effects and presets, just look up gradient. And then we're going to toss this gradient ramp onto our text here. So the first color, we're going to change this to like a yellowish orange. Right around this color, you could copy that color code, hit OK. And then the end color, we're going to change that to a darker yellowish orange. You can see like we're not really seeing that. So what we need to do is there's these anchor points here. If we drag this up, it'll bring up the gradient aspect. And then there's one also at the top. If we bring that down, it'll look pretty good. One thing I'm noticing is that the end color can be a little bit darker. Right around there looks good. So 2 more things that we need to add. One is the money burst. We're going to toss that on there, figure out the start of it. We really want that money to burst like when the text is going to pop up. So kind of around here. And then when this comes up, we want to make sure it's coming up in the right area. And then of course we want to put it behind the buildings and even behind the money and just position that right. Another thing that we're going to add to this is a tint. So in the effects and presets, you're going to look up tint, toss that tint onto that money burst. We're going to just change the map to black to this orangey brown. So you want to really mess around with this to get the right result that we're going for. It should be this kind of orangey brown color. Something like that should look good. You can copy this color code if you're following along. Hit OK. And finally, we're going to add the other money burst on top. Just figure out, when this is coming up. So right after that money burst, we want this one popping up a little bit. We can scale this down so it fits within the frame. And that's pretty good. So we don't really need to do anything else to that money burst. What we want to do is drag everything as much as possible out. So we don't want to cut this. And I'll explain why in a little bit. But yeah, this is scene number 2. Now we're going to move on to scene number 3, which is the computer scene. So to do that, what I have here is a screenshot of the IKEA page here. So I'm just going to scale this down, put it right about there. And we're going to make a cut in it, or we're just going to drag this to the end. We want this popping up right around the 5.5 second mark. So that's when we want that there. And then what I'm going to do here is actually pre-compose this. So right click, pre-compose. We're going to call this website. We're going to do move all attributes to new composition and then hit OK. And then you want to double click to get into that. So from here, what we need to do is go up to our rectangle tool. I'm going to create a rectangle around, like just cutting all this stuff out. What it should be is the same exact color as the website. So to get that, go up to your fill, do the eyedropper tool, and then you're going to eyedropper up here, and that will make it seem very seamless. You could also create one for the top. It's going to look a little bit better like that. Alrighty, from here, what we need to do is add a couple of pictures in this grid format. I'm going to do this really quickly, but you want to spend time getting the spacing right. So I got this IKEA chair that we can add. I'm going to scale this down just like that. Got some meatballs. We're going to scale that down as well. So the important thing is we want to leave a gap here for the 3D animation. We want to make sure that there's no like frame. Like we want to leave this square image here blank, just like that. We want to have that little area. Toss another picture of a meatball. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and speed this up. But essentially what we're doing is filling up this grid with the images provided. And I'll show you what it looks like at the end. All right, so I have my grid here of just the images. And like I said, you want to leave this space right here because that's when we're going to zoom out. And then the IKEA building from the second scene is going to be showing up right here. Now, definitely spend a little bit more time getting the spacing right on your end, but I'm just going quick here for tutorial purposes. One thing that we can do with everything is actually animate it right now. So this first IKEA chair right here, I'm going to animate that scaling in. So I'm going to hit S on my keyboard. Make sure my playhead is at the beginning. We're going to create a keyframe for scale. Bring that out to the right just a little bit. And then make this 0. Highlight both keyframes. Right click. Keyframe assistant. Easy ease. And then we're going to go over to our graph editor right here. Click on the right one. And you should see this yellow box pop up with this little dot. And we're just going to drag that to the left. So that's what it looks like. It's a little too fast, so I'm just going to take this keyframe and drag it to the right. Perfect. Okay, so now what I'm also going to do is animate these coming in as well, doing the exact same thing where I scaled it up. So it's just going, I'll explain it one more time. We're just going to go over and to our Swedish meatballs here, make sure that layer is selected, hit S on the keyboard, create a keyframe for scale, bring that out to the right. Change this from 33 to 0 and then highlight both keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and go over to our graph editor and bring that to the left. So I'm going to do that exact sequence for all the rest of these pictures. I'm going to speed this up though, but yeah, make sure to do that. All right, so all these are popping in, but what we want to do is have them pop in at different times. So what we need to do is just take some and stagger it and try to make it feel a little organic. I'm going to see how that looks and then mess with it if need be. And so they're all coming in a little too quick one after another. So we're just going to space this all out, make it a little bit slower. You could even take some of the keyframes and lengthen them. See how that looks. Awesome, so everything's coming in nicely here. So we're done working in this composition. We're gonna go back to our regular composition. And the one thing that we need to do is create a cutout here. So to do that, make sure that this layer is selected. We're gonna go over to the top left here, go to our rectangle tool, and then just click and drag. Try to make it, a square here or, fit that frame that you created. We're going to change our mask. So if you don't see this, just hit M on your keyboard and bring up the mask settings. We're going to change that from add to subtract. Then from here, what we can do is just adjust the corner here. You just double click and it'll allow you to adjust this to get it right. And there we have it. So there's our frame. Obviously, it's not looking good yet. That's because we need to get into 3D animation of it. All right, so for the 3D animation, it's pretty simple. Just might sound confusing if you skip around. So don't skip around. Watch me go through this and go along with me. I'll bring you step by step of what needs to be done. And once again, this is going to look a whole lot better at the end when we add the finishing touches to tie in the look. All right, so for that 3D scene, what we first want to do is create a camera. So I'm going to right click, new camera. You can copy these exact settings for the camera and just hit OK. From there, we want to highlight all of our layers and then check them off as a 3D layer. So since they're all highlighted, once you just click this little button right here, they'll all become a 3D layer. Then we're going to change our view to 2 views. When you do that, you'll see a view pop up. Could be similar to this on the left, and you'll see our our active view. So this is what it's going to look like normally. On the left, if it doesn't look like this, there's a couple settings that you probably need to change. One is the view right here. You'll probably be on a different view. Change it to right, and then also make sure you're in classic 3D, and it should look like this. So all this really is just the right side of the 3D scene. So this is our camera here. This is where all of our layers are currently at, and this is like behind our layers. So for this first scene, what we need to do is start to create that depth to it. And to do that, we want to put our background in the back, right? It's our background. So that makes sense. So you're going to click on our background layer, which is the warehouse picture. You'll see this little UI diagram thing pop up. We're going to go over to our Z, this blue one, and just push that way back. And you see as I push it back on the right here, it becomes pretty small. So to counteract that, we're just going to scale it up. So I'm going to hit S on my keyboard, scale this up until it fits the size of the frame. Okay. So for the IKEA logo, the text, and the arrows, what we can do right now is actually pre-compose all of that. So I'm going to right click and pre-compose. We'll call this IKEA logo. Make sure move all attributes is selected and hit OK. Once we pre-compose it, it's not going to be a 3D layer. So we just need to recheck that 3D layer. So with this, I'm just going to push it a little bit back. We don't want to push it all the way back because we want to have that depth. Having that depth, the space between some layers will make it look a lot more 3D when you do like a zoom in effect. All right, so I want it right about there. For the money here, we can take one and really bring it close to the camera. Bring it close to the camera, drag our playhead to the right to see, where it is. That's pretty good. And this one we can bring it a little bit closer as well. So we're creating that depth once again. So right about there. All right. So from here, what we want to do is actually get into animating it. And to do that, we're going to go to our camera layer, drop it down, go to transform, drop that down. I like creating a keyframe for everything here, just in case we have to manipulate something later on. So go ahead and create a keyframe for everything. And then we're going to drag our playhead all the way to the right, basically right before this scene pops up. And I'm going to go over the top left to our dolly towards cursor tool. With this, what I can do when my camera layer is selected, I can go over to my active camera and really zoom it in. Okay. One thing I do want to do is actually turn down the scale of IKEA quite a bit. So I really want to zoom in here. I'm going to re-click on my camera layer here, and I'm going to zoom in and fill the IKEA, make it pretty big. Obviously it's not centered here. So to get it centered, don't move your playhead, but go over to the pan under cursor tool. It's right here at the top left, and we're just going to center that right here. Maybe it's a little too zoomed in, so I might back off a little bit, and that looks pretty good. So if we watch this back, okay, not bad. I think one of the money things can move up a little bit. Right about here, we can have them fade out. So to do that, I'm just going to hit T on my keyboard, create a keyframe for opacity, drag my playhead to the right, make that 0%, drag my playhead back to the left, go to the other money one, hit T on my keyboard to bring up opacity, create a keyframe, drag my playhead to the right, and then make that 0%. So now they kind of just fade out. They fade out a little too quick, so I'm just going to push these keyframes out, kind of see how that looks. I think maybe scaling one of these up will help as well. All right. And then to make this animation a little bit more smoother, what we can do is take the keyframes right here, the ones that we manipulated, highlight all of them, right click, go to keyframe assistant, easy ease. We're going to go over to our graph editor, click on the right here, drag that to the left. So we're dragging this little orange one here. We want to make sure we get this purple one and drag that to the left. So once we do that, it's going to make this little ramping effect, and it's going to look a lot smoother as it gets closer to the actual text here, the IKEA text. So one thing you might notice is as soon as this other scene pops up, it's super zoomed in. So that's a little bit of a thing that we have to work with. To counteract this, what we are going to do is create a cut within our camera. So right when this scene pops up, that's when I want the camera to cut. So I'm going to hold down Command-Shift-D. That's going to make a cut in the camera. So now we have two cameras here. So camera number 2, what we want to do is go to our transform settings and hit reset. It's going to kind of reset everything and put the scene how we need it to be. One thing we can do is delete the keyframes in the beginning just so there's no funny business going on here. Now we need to match this cut with the cut into the IKEA right here. We want to have a little bit of a match cut. To do that, that's probably going to be the trickiest part of this tutorial. But what we need to do is, so for this first camera, when it's zooming in, first let's move the keyframes all the way to the right here. And we want it to kind of rotate in that angle of where the IKEA is right here. But what we could do here is also zoom in. So I'm gonna make sure my playhead's at the beginning, go to my dolly tool, and we're just gonna zoom in on the IKEA here. And we're also gonna move it so we could go up to our pan under cursor tool, and we can put that in the middle of our scene. Okay, so it's in the middle of our scene, but we also need to create that depth first. So to do that, I have my cloud background. So I'm gonna click on that right here, clicking on the cloud background, going over my Z tool, and I'm going to push this way back, okay? And then I want to scale it up because I can see the outline of it is not entirely fitting the frame, so scale that up. 50 billion, we're just going to push this back a little bit. We'll mess with that a little later. And where IKEA is at the moment, totally fine. So we need to get this to match that. So with our first camera layer here, what we want to do is rotate it in the same angle. So right about, so when it's coming in here, that's when I want to rotate it. So I'm going to create keyframes all for right there. And then as it gets towards the end, I'm going to add a little bit of rotation. So I'm going to go over to our Y rotation and kind of push that off to the side like that. And then our X rotation, we're gonna, I actually think it's fun. We're really gonna mess with that Y rotation, really push it off to the side. But what we need to do is I'm gonna drag these keyframes forward so everything can be aligned here. We wanna align these keyframes. What we need to do is then make sure it's like in the middle here. So I'm going over to my pan under cursor tool, pushing this to the middle. Maybe it's a little too much Y rotation, kind of undo that a little bit. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to take these keyframes and drag it to the right. And it should pretty close. Go back here. Just might have to mess with it a little bit, mess with that rotation to, you know, exactly how it is. Even the Z rotation we can mess with and the positioning of it. That looks a whole lot better. So we're going to cover that up too with a little bit of a lens flare, but it should be good for now. So that doesn't look too bad. The one thing that we do have to do is I'm going to highlight these keyframes here, right click keyframe assistant, and do easy ease. That's just going to make it feel a little bit smoother when it begins to rotate. So we could see even the rotation is a little too quick here. So what we can do is take these keyframes and really drag it to the left so it starts to feel a little more natural here. All right, so that match cut doesn't look too bad. Now we're gonna go over to our second camera settings here and really mess with that. It's very zoomed in here. We want to make sure our second camera is selected, drop everything down, and then I'm going to drag my playhead to the right a little bit by a couple seconds, or by a second or two, maybe half a second. We're going to go to our dolly towards cursor tool and then just bring this back to right about here. And then we can also mess with the pan under cursor tool, begin to put it in the right place. So right there, it's pretty good. Then we can drag this out a bit just to mess with the timing. Not too bad. One thing we need to do is get that money, push that back in the space because it's covering our 50 billion. We're going to push that behind it. Wrong money. Make sure we have the right one selected and push that behind our 50 billion. And then we're going to go to our 50 billion text and really angle this right. So I'm going to hit R on my keyboard, bring up the Z rotation, kind of tilt it. The Y rotation here is what's really going to make it feel 3D. And then we're going to just try to match that angle here. So you got to mess with the settings a little bit to get that angle that we want. We could even scale it up to make it nice and big. You know, it definitely looks pretty good. The money's still kind of popping through it. So to counteract that, we can just go over to our money layer, make sure that's really behind our text. Back to the text though, what we want to do is have it pop up right about like right when that money comes in. So to do this, we want to hit P on our keyboard for the position settings on, or we can just do the entire drop down actually. And then we're going to go to our position, create a keyframe for that. So this is right when we want it to pop up. Drag our playhead to the beginning and then see this Y right here. We're just going to bring that down right under the IKEA thing. But what we could see here is that it's sticking out a little bit. So one thing that we can do is just take the Y rotation and make sure it's on the right plane so it's not sticking through. And then highlight both these keyframes right here, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, go over to our graph editor and then drag that to the left right there and it'll just make it smooth when it pops up. So we can see it's popping up nice and smooth here. So I kind of want it to pop up a little bit slower and a little bit later. So I'm just going to drag this to the right. Should be good. Might just need to mess with the X rotation a little bit. All right, so that's pretty much our second animation here. Maybe this money effect can be a little bit more over here, but that's pretty much it. That's how we want it to be. Now it needs to come through this screen here. So to do this, what we want to do is right when these keyframes end here, this is when we want this popping in. But this really needs to be scaled up. So I'm going to hit S on my keyboard and we're going to scale this up as much as possible and then also bring it to the right so it's filling the entire frame here. Just like that. From here, what we need to do is drag our playhead to the right and go to our dolly towards cursor tool and just zoom way out. And as we're zooming out, we want to make sure it's zooming out and putting it in the middle here. So we're getting some issues when we're zooming out that we're seeing the bottom here. So one way to counteract this is these keyframes that are right here, like right when this comes in and then starts to scale out even more. What we can do is just zoom it in a little bit. That will counteract it. So that bottom is filling in. We still need to work on that. One thing that can also fix it is scaling down the website thing. So we can see this green box of where it's supposed to come through. We scale this down. It'll fix it a little bit to where it's just showing. And we can also push it up a little bit. So that should help it look pretty good. Yeah, there we go. And then all we need to do is jump back to our end here and then readjust. And then we can just take this and move it out a little bit more. So we're having a little issue when we adjusted these keyframes here. It like zooms in. I don't know why it does it. So what I'm going to do here is take all these keyframes and we're going to re-go to keyframe assistant, easy ease that, and that'll change up the dynamic of the keyframes. So you just got to mess around with the keyframes a little bit to get that desired look. All right, so now that we have the 3D animation done, it's time to stylize it. And this is what's really going to tie everything together. So we can go back to one view and really look at what we're doing here. So the first thing that I'm going to add is a turbulent displacement to the background. So I'm just going to look up turbulent displace, toss that on there. We're going to change this to 20, change this to 4, and then we're going to drop down the evolution options, go to random seed. I'm going to hold down option. As I click random seed, that'll bring us our expressions here. I'm going to type in time. I'm going to do time times 7. So can't really see it happening on the background. It's just a little subtle thing. What we can do is take that turbulent displace and bring it to our IKEA logo and other text. I'm going to go into our IKEA logo and other text, and we're going to add a deep glow to everything. If you don't have deep glow, you can use After Effects regular glow effect, but I highly recommend getting deep glow as it's just probably one of the nicest effects and most often effects that I use to, get a nice style. So if you have the money for it, go and get deep glow. We're just going to turn down the exposure and the radius of it to look something like that. You can copy this deep glow here, Command C, copy it to our other text, and then also copy it to the IKEA logo. It looks pretty good. Go back to our main tutorial or our main composition here. Right when it switches, we want a lens flare popping up. So I have something for that. So I have this little lens flare. We're going to add this on top of this transition here. Just make sure it's in the middle. So right around there is when we want it to happen. Maybe even drag a little this way. And then we're just going to change the blend mode from normal to add. There we go. And it really just ties that transition in pretty well. A couple of other settings that we want to put in here. First, I'll create a new adjustment layer, get a new adjustment layer. We're going to call this VR glitch. That's exactly what we're going to add to it, is a little VR glitch. So I'm going to look up glitch. Yeah, it should be VR digital glitch. And obviously everything's like really distorted here. So there's a couple settings that we need to change. Under distortion, we're going to drop that down. Bring the geometry distortion X all the way to 0, the distortion complexity to 0 or 1, and then the distortion rate all the way to 0. Then what we can mess with is the color distortion here. So you see if I mess with it, it separates the color. So we only want a little bit of separation here, not too much. So right around 28 looks good. We'll look at maybe 28's a little too much. 17's good here. So that will give us that little chrome, the color separation effect that Magnates Media always applies to his videos. All right, so we need another adjustment layer. We're going to rename this one to vignette. And that's exactly what we're going to add to it, is a vignette. We're going to pull that up to right around 225. It's looking good. Another adjustment layer here. We're going to rename this one to grain. And I'm going to look up grain. and add that grain. We're going to change the viewing mode to final output. We're going to change the intensity, or actually we're going to change the size to 0.5, the softness to 0.5, and then we're going to go to animation and then the speed to 0.5 as well. This is really going to start to tie things in. We're actually going to take this grain and put it under the vignette. All right, so there's also one more adjustment layer that we're going to add onto this. We're going to call this one CRTV. And what we're going to add to this is a grid effect. So we're going to change the size form to width and height sliders. Going to change the width to 2, the height to 4, the border to 1. Going to change the color to black, change the opacity to 15, and then the blending mode, we're going to make that hard light. That's going to give us this line effect to make it look like we're recording a computer screen. It just kind of ties in the whole look. The next effect that we're going to apply to this same adjustment layer is a CC lens. Toss that on there. It's going to look really weird, but what we want to do is decrease the convergence. So we want to decrease a little bit, and then we want to increase the size. So just going to give this rounded effect. And then I'm sure you're asking like, all right, there's these black borders here. So to get rid of that black border, we're going to toss on a transform effect. And with this, we're just going to scale everything up. Alrighty, there we have it. This is our final animation. We did some 3D scenes here doing the Magnates media style. Shout out to him for this. Now, if you guys want to join our free workshop where I'm going to be showing you the 3-step to go from being a okay, decent editor who is struggling to land clients, get paid what they deserved, or maybe you're even working with picky clients, to a leveraged editor who's able to land clients anywhere from 2 to 5K a month, I'm going to be showing you in this free workshop. So the link is in the description for that. Make sure to sign up for that. You do not want to miss it, as it's going to be an exclusive workshop for everybody. I'm going to be capping the amount of people that can join. I'm literally going to show you how I went from an okay editor to a leverage editor to then scaling my content agency $30,000 a month. So make sure you're inside. Like I said, you don't want to miss it. The link is in the description for that. See you there.